Hello everybody and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you for joining me. This is a video I have been excited to do for a little while. I've taken a break from doing my political stuff. Those of you guys who aren't aware, kind of one of the ways that I kind of got my break was talking about the transits of 2018, 2019, and 2020 like years ago. I used to work with Astrology and I did a lot of predictions, world event predictions, astrology relating to politics and all kinds of stuff. And I did some pretty out there stuff. I had some videos kind of go viral for talking about the inauguration of Trump. Before Trump became president, I looked at the inauguration chart. I did that, I think, like twice. And then I continued to make political predictions looking at America's chart. So I have not done one of these in a very long time. Part of it is I've been super busy. The other part of it is, well, a lot of the things that I predicted played out. So if you haven't seen those videos, check it out. I think they're still on Astrologer's channel. A lot of people have asked me to come back and make a video about what's going on with America now, especially the impending Pluto return. Some of you guys are watching this video because you actually saw me discuss this and talk about this on my podcast that I have with the Peace Dealer, the Midheaven podcast. If you haven't seen it, we kind of just go on the surface of some of the things that I saw. This is the type of astrology that I think I'm most passionate about. I love history. I love the cycle of astrology and how history repeats itself and how we learn from the past in order to embrace a new future. I just want to say, just to preface this video, here's the deal. I'm not here to talk about political perspectives. I'm not going to discuss my political views. I really want to focus on, as an astrologer, my job is to analyze the stars and the chart and what the planets are saying and how they're communicating. So a lot of the ways that I'm going to analyze the chart, I'm going to use techniques that I would use for a natal chart. And for some of you guys, this is super nerdy, way in depth. It may go a little over your head, but that's okay. Those of you guys who are into astrology, you might totally nerd out. Today, we're going to take a look at America's chart. I'm not going to, talk too much about the natal chart in itself. That's really been done quite a bit on the internet. Maybe one day I'll sit down and do that. But I will touch on some of the most prominent aspects in America's chart and what's going on with the transits. Transiting planets being planets that are moving in the sky right now that are activating placements in America's horoscope. I'm also going to be discussing the progress chart, how the planet progressions are painting a picture and really use it for a predictive method. And I'll be looking at the solar return chart for America from 4th of July of 2021. And I'm going to kind of put them up on the screen so you can see what I'm looking at. This is going to be me really diving deep and just kind of analyzing what I see coming. I already kind of did this with Mike, like off the cuff, on the podcast. And over the last week, I've had time to kind of go back and perfect and create notes, and also like kind of doing some like historical research and kind of looking at what happened the last time we had these transits. And I'm going to break down some of the archetypal themes of Pluto and also Neptune and Saturn and Uranus, because there are some very prominent things that are happening with some of these transits in America's chart. So please, please, please don't make me make the comments like no comments. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get into any kind of like political brawls. I really just want to analyze the astrology. And all in all, I would say this about America's chart. I'd say this about any birth chart. We are here to overcome our astrological placements. Like, we're here to supersede that. The chart is not limiting in a sense that says, this is what will happen. The chart talks about what we're capable of becoming, the destiny, if we embrace that, if we co-create with the universe and allow these things to happen. So certainly, there's no doubt, you look at America and what America has achieved over the last several hundred years, it's quite wild. Compared to a lot of other countries in the world, both from a positive and a negative standpoint. So my job is to remain neutral. Obviously, I'm optimistic about the future, and I also know that we would not be going through some of these transits that we're going to be having over the next couple of years unless it was a part of a bigger spiritual leveling up or a purge. Those of you guys who have seen my videos or you've seen my weeklies, I'm pretty direct between the eyes. I'm not like an astrologer that's going to fluff things and kind of be like it's all butterflies and rainbows. Definitely, if you are somebody who's more sensitive or freaked out by some predictions of the world, might be a good time to like not check in. But all in all, I come at this from a perspective that being prepared and being educated, revolving around the spiritual lessons of why we're having happen, what's going on in America now, that there's a bigger purpose for it, and that it's really like a big purge. The more that I think that we can kind of go into that and allow that change to happen, but also be more conscious and aware, because we are starting a new Pluto cycle. A lot of the things that are happening right now are as a result of what has happened and how America was founded. And that's everything from big business to our relationship with Britain to bits and pieces of slavery. There's a lot of things here that we're going to kind of talk about today that can be some really sensitive topics. And so I just want to put that out there before we even get started. This is purely just my own astrological interest in me kind of just babbling. A lot of the way that I'm going to go through the charts today, it's very similar to what I do when I'm studying a person's chart, or when I'm studying a missing person's chart, or when I'm studying a horary chart, or whatever. I like to play astrological detective. Super OCD, Sun, Mercury, Mars, Pluto, and Scorpio. Like, I want to go deep and I want to look at everything and really reveal everything prior to presenting information to the world. I was even just looking at the transits of like right now, and it's just so like, what better time to do this than when the moon is in Scorpio, right? Because we want to dig deep and we want to figure things out. But as we speak, the moon is coming into a square with Jupiter, which is right over America's moon, and also the transit sun in Leo. So even just me getting this video done today, there was like so much resistance, and then finally I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, we're just gonna do it. And I think it's a good time for it to come out, because it's just very timely with this incoming full moon that we're going to have in Aquarius, which it has a very prominent role in America's solar return chart. We'll get to that a little bit later. To those of you guys who aren't aware, I'm a Western evolutionary astrologer. I am an avid lover and student of astrology for over 14 years. I have practiced with some awesome teachers. I studied particularly step degree astrology. I took all kinds of courses and worked with people like Nicola. If you guys aren't aware of him, rest in peace, we miss him. Also, I'm taking some horary classes right now with Nightlight Astrology, or Mr. Adam Akuchababa, I always mispronounce his name, and Evolutionary Astrology, the Jeffrey Wolf Green course. So I kind of pepper a little bit everywhere. Definitely, I like to integrate a lot of evolutionary astrology into my Western predictive methods, but all kinds of astrology fascinates me, but especially political astrology is like, this is my favorite thing. So I'm very excited to be back, especially because I feel like a lot of my techniques have really they've really developed since the last couple of videos that I've done. So let's go ahead and get into this and start unpacking America's chart. So what I'm looking at here is the chart. There's two, but I'm really just going to focus on this one because I'm still doing some more work. So I'm actually planning in my head to do another video at the end of this year as a kind of like a refresher, but also going deeper into 2022. There is a second chart for America, and I'm going to talk about which one I like in another video. But we're going to work with this chart, July 4th, 1776, obviously America's birthday, 5:10 p.m. Philadelphia. Some people are going to get on this, on these comments, and they're going to be like, well, how do we know that's the time? Go into the Astro data banks, go and look at what's out there. This is one of the most highly used charts. And for me, you know, the sun in Cancer, the moon in Aquarius, the Sag rising, it does make sense. So let's just talk a little bit about this chart briefly. We're going to break down like the big three, just a couple important aspects before I get into the transits. The natal chart is very similar to like an event chart. We can analyze it in a very similar way. So for example, when somebody is born, or when there is the launch of a book, or when a business is opened, or an LLC, or when there is a marriage, where the planets align is going to create the chart. So this is the casting of that. So this is kind of the personality of America. I saw a meme, it was a while ago, it was something like, America is a, you know, hold my beer rising, this, that, and the other, like making fun of basically like America's kind of demeanor, because there's a little bit of some wacky placements when you look at this chart. Sun, moon, and rising being the sun in Cancer. So the sun in Cancer is I protect the homeland, the family, the roots, the heritage, right? So, you know, it's almost like sun in Cancer, you know, it's like American pie, right? It's like fireworks and barbecues and, you know, hanging out with the homeland and the family and buying the house, the American dream. So the sun in Cancer in the 7th house also does really put a spotlight where we stand out to other countries, right? The sun being the ruler of the 9th house in this chart. So there's definitely a lot of like us in the news and like us being put out there, especially pertaining to our public image, how we are as a country, how we have, structured and built our lives revolving around Cancerian topics, having children, expanding our families, building houses, things that pertain to protection and security. And when we look at just what's kind of happened in America, especially since like the 40s and the 50s, coming out of war, coming home, pushing the housewife and the American dream of, building the house and everybody kind of having that family unit, it's quite interesting to see how we've come really full circle in recent years with the planets that have been in Capricorn. I think about like the Saturn and the Pluto and the Jupiter opposition that has happened over the last several years in Capricorn. And we really have seen where we've lost sight of really how and why this country was founded, okay? And that's an opinion. But I think with that opposition, we have seen where we look at the axis of Capricorn and Cancer, where Capricorn is elders, elderly, superiors, people who are in charge, bosses, businesses, and where it's just really been running up against America's sun. So we've been experiencing that really since the Pluto opposition, which happened, I believe, I want to say 2010, 2013. I'll check that. But that's when it started. And then the last 2 years, it's really kind of blown it out of the water. And, we've seen where because we have given power away, whether this is to government, whether this is to government officials, whether this is to our jobs, our careers, it's really actually negatively aspected and hindered America's sun. So many people find, okay, we're not able to afford to buy houses. We're not able to afford to feed our family. We're not able to afford to take a day off. And certainly we're really examining through coming out of 2018, 2019, 2020, what is home like? I remember, back in the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, I was looking at the North Node in Cancer going like, okay, we're going to really start kind of figuring out what home and family means. So in some kind of backwards way, through what happened with the pandemic and the whole slew of planets that went through Capricorn, many people found themselves in their home. With their family more than usual, educating their children, having to work from a kitchen table, Cancer. We've become more aware of our roots, and I think the North Node brought that to America's attention so we can really be aware of where we came from. Not just in a sense of where we came from in our American values, but also where did we come from? Roots is our ancestors, our past, Cancer. So there's been a lot of hot topics the last several years. Really, it's gone on for a long time, but really immediately the last several years pertaining to being a U.S. citizen, being able to be here. What are your rights? What are your birthrights for being here? Who do we allow to live in this country? Who can work here? Who can buy homes here? Who can have children here? And so that's all been kind of heated up, right, with all these aspects to America's sun. Now, the rising sign is Sag, so I think that's the hold my beer aspect of the meme. If somebody has it, let me know. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was funny. But the Sag rising is like go big or go home. It's all about, I think, being somebody who's very big and optimistic and wants to show everything to the world. It puts everything under a magnifying glass. Those of you guys who know like a Sag rising, everything they do is big. They want to be able to have freedom. They want to be able to have freedom to travel. They want to be able to have freedom of speech. So when I look at that Sag rising, it's definitely really emphasizing America's Jupiter and where we go big. Jupiter in Cancer in the 7th. We go big when it's talking about, how much land we have, how much freedom we have, the home of the braves, right? So in a way, there's a lot of having a lot of appreciation and really just a lot of like patriotism in this chart, right? And where we came from, how the country was founded, but equally that we are a country that was founded on immigrants, and if you look at, the Statue of Liberty, that being placed, off of the island as immigrants were coming into the States, it's welcoming everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what your background is, what your ethnicity is, how much money you have, and I think we're losing touch with that. I think we're losing touch with the fact that this is a country that was founded as a hodgepodge and a melting pot of being able to come here and believe in the American dream. So then we look at the uncomfortable angle that the sun makes to America's ascendant, the inconjunct, the quincunx, where what it means to say we welcome people and whether or not we're actually welcoming people. I don't want to get too much into the chart, but that's my interpretation. Then we look at the moon, and the moon in Aquarius in the 3rd house. So very communicative, chatty. The moon moves faster than any of the other planets in the chart. So it's definitely like very busy with technology, communication, applications, information. Like I think of the 3rd house as like radios, TV shows, commercials, movement, cars, vehicles, and things of that nature. And the freedom, Aquarius, to roam, to travel, to change and transform because it rules the 8th house. So one thing that I like about this chart is that it's weird and it's wacky. It gives you the freedom to be able to express yourself, the freedom to communicate, especially with the aspects that it makes to the natal Mercury, the quincunx or the inconjunct, the freedom of business, maybe the ability that you can come to America with the American dream and you can make it happen. You can make business happen. You can become somebody who's successful and independent and self-sufficient, or an entrepreneur overnight. So much big business, technology, apps, innovation, so many things have come from the United States, and I think it's really interesting to see the evolution of where things are going to go over the next 2 or 3 years, because I see it as kind of being a make or break period for the United States in terms of business, but also in terms of our living environments and what the outlook looks for in terms of buying cars, buying homes, how we're living, are we living sustainably? A lot of these things are going to come up as a result of the planets like Saturn and eventually Pluto that's going to move into Aquarius. So this is the chart. You can take a look at this. There's plenty of people who have done stuff on it. I think eventually maybe when I really have the time to sit down and do like a really thorough video like this, probably as long as this video will be on it, I will do that at some point if you guys are interested in it. But I don't know a lot of like younger people who are like, yeah, let's talk about America's chart. But there is definitely like astrologers who will go so deep into the various forms of the United States charts and also the timing and some of those things, which I'll talk about today because I think it is important to look at the aspects. But this is just the natal chart. So now I'm going to move into the transits of what's happening right now in America's chart. And I'm going to speak and talk a lot about the outer planet transits. We're going to talk a lot about the Pluto return. We're going to talk a lot about Saturn. I'm going to discuss also a bit about Uranus. And we'll talk about the nodes. Those aren't planets, obviously, but it's important. Pretty much anything that's going to be past, Jupiter. Jupiter's still moving pretty quickly. Right now, the future looks bright, though, with Jupiter sitting on America's moon. That's the positive thing, is that there's definitely a lot of talking about the forward motion and where we need to be going. But it's the setup for Saturn. So I would like to first just give you like a little list of some of the bigger transits that I think are probably the most important for what's going to be going on in the immediate next couple of years. And I'll give you some time frames also of when I see kind of peak energies rising in the United States. So some major transits that I have noted is transit Saturn has been conjunct the US South Node, okay? And so the South Node in a natal placement it talks about what's familiar. Some people would argue that it's past life. Some people would argue that it's karma, what we fall into. The nodes in the chart are calculated based off of the moon. And they are invisible placements that talk about, not where we're coming from and where we're going, but where we have a tendency to feel more comfortable and what we kind of come into this lifetime kind of knowing or carrying, or an energy that is just repeating in this lifetime that we need to be aware of. And the North Node being more dharmic, more what we're hoping to achieve. Sometimes it's something we want so badly, but we don't know how to achieve it. And that North Node can be unlocked through transits where we come into our destiny. That's like the most neutral way that I can kind of say it, because I fall in the middle. You know, I've studied evolutionary astrology, and I think there's a lot to it, but I also, the more that I'm starting to like go deeper into like traditional ancient astrology, or you know, Hellenistic astrology, something I'm starting to kind of get into. It's really opening my mind and my perspective into kind of realizing that we can't just say, oh, this is your past and this is your future, because it's not guaranteed, right? And there is no, it's almost like you get a fresh start when you reincarnate, or when you look at the nodes. So it's not really fair to say that the South Node is what we've already done, forget it. The South Node can be very useful and very helpful in some ways, but through transit it can bring up karmic situations. So the South Node in the second house has an energy of having worked very hard karmically in the past, or working hard to make money, to bring something in, to make a difference. So the South Node in America, you know, second house in Aquarius, is this natural understanding of entrepreneurialism, of the freedoms when it comes to technology, development, apps. We think of like Facebook, Twitter, all of these, like, you know, Facebook being this like giant business that has really kind of in a way taken over the internet, and all of these other apps and these other things that we have. So the ability to know no bounds, or no bottom, because there's like no, like it's just like a deep well, it keeps going with the South Node there. It's just going to keep expanding in ways of being able to reinvent technology, money from technology, freedom when it comes to money. When you look at like America, I'm going to give you a whole like list of just events that I'm going to rattle off that are kind of reminiscent to what's coming. We look at so much of this country was founded by rebelling against Britain, right? And because of the taxes that were implemented and how they were trying to control, you know, trade. And there was just a lot of things where finally we kind of looked at it and we went, we're fed up. We're not doing this. We're not doing this anymore. We're not paying the tax. We're not buying your stuff. We're becoming independent. That's so Aquarius. So the South Node being in the second house makes me wonder if part of America's karma, because it's linked to Pluto, revolves around freedom from global markets. And it's kind of ironic because a lot of the world does base you know, their economics off of the fluctuation of the dollar. And so we're going to talk a lot about how there's going to be a lot of changes going on with America's economics and the finances of what's going on, at least within our country, and how that affects everything globally. And I think a lot of people are going to be seeing how we respond to things. So South Node in the second does have this energy also of having worked hard, knowing how to work hard. It's in a positive aspect to the natal Saturn in the 10th. So, you know, building businesses, building partnerships, building things that are valuable, building things that are luxurious, Libra. And yeah, it's like if you look at America's, like, you know, the way that we kind of glamorize overworking, and that, you know, you just do nothing but work, 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 show up, you know, go to work, go home, sleep, get up, do it all over again. Yeah, that's very much South Node Pluto in the second. We look at the North Node in the 8th, and it makes me feel like this is also kind of a reckoning, right? Because we've got Saturn transiting our South Node, so it's bringing up all of these karmic losses. So what have we seen over the last 8 months, 9 months? Well, I mean, we're coming off of a year of a worldwide pandemic. Many people have been reliant on unemployment or on government support or government aid. I think of Saturn on the South Node as the masses or groups of people feeling like they need more support, they need more food, they need more money to be able to keep things going. So it's been kind of wild having Saturn there, especially at a 6, because it's also realizing that if we keep working the way that we're working, right, or running things financially the way that we're financially running things, it's not sustainable. Saturn on the South Node is like, if I see this in a client's chart, you know, no matter what they do, they may keep trying to build up their income or make more money or receive more or do more. And it's like, it almost feels like no matter what they do, they feel like there's a loss or something breaks off or it's not consistent. I see the second house as the money that we make. So Saturn being there is really kind of showing us from a karmic perspective, pushing people to just work, and also be consumers and live to work, so that way we can afford our cost of living or afford food or continue to maintain this kind of consumerism type lifestyle, especially because it's being filtered in through the lens of Aquarius, which is the ads that pop up on Facebook, or, you know, the thing that you're looking at on a website, and then you go into Instagram or something else and you see a bunch of ads pop up trying to get you to buy things. The influence that we have with media, and even with, you know, I think how the United States is pushing us to just buy or to consume, because the United States is a company, okay? Let's just call it what it is, especially looking at this chart. There definitely is money to be made with this chart, off of people, off of taxes, off of, you know, pushing people, encouraging people to continue to, you know, keep getting married, having babies, buying houses, and just keeping that train going, right? And so it's kind of interesting to see Saturn show up, and we kind of realize, like, wait a second, you know, especially at a 6, us working in this way is not really providing us a really healthy lifestyle, financially, spiritually, vibrationally, however which way you cut it. And if we've got people that are sick and have lack of healthcare, I'm coming at this from like a 6, I'm thinking of like a Virgo energy, or we don't have a collective healthcare, or we don't have support. There isn't there is like a wealth inequality, right, with Saturn on the South Node, that it's not really benefiting us as a whole. So having a whole select group of, you know, billionaires that are going into space, and then we've got people who are like literally, you know, being, you know, removed from their home in the midst of pandemics and not being able to take care of their family. That's not really going to help us, because you're going to see a domino effect where, you know, eventually things are going to fall apart. And I am going to talk about how that's going to kind of play out at the end of this year, especially financially in the United States. And the buck stops with this Pluto and the Saturn transit. We're going to see that, you know, I believe a lot of the financial implications and the challenges of what's coming financially is not really going to play out until the end of 2021. And I'll get into those transits. But, you know, just Saturn on the South Node is kind of showing us where perhaps maybe, especially in Aquarius, we're being asked to just work through it, push through it. It'll be fine. Just keep going. And those of you guys who are familiar with astrology, you know that, you know, Pluto is the final stop, right? So in a way, Saturn was setting the stage the last 2 years, being in Capricorn, hovering around Pluto, showing us where perhaps maybe, you know, where there were some world events that were going on that were getting ready to massively impact America's transits over our natal Pluto and our South Node. And that did happen, right? Pluto ruling the 12th house in this chart. A virus or something darker energies, darker collective groups, whatever you believe in, it did impact this chart. So the South Node now is moving forward. That's done. And over the next 2 years, Saturn is going to progressively move towards America's moon. And so Saturn moon, harsh realities pertaining to what is the moon, our emotions, documents, communication. I think of Saturn going into Aquarius as definitely social distancing, but it also might be, you know, how politics or how political figures or how the internet or whatever, we're dealing with aspects of like Big Brother paying attention and monitoring and perhaps even filtering and determining what information you get, what websites you can see, what we see on the news, what we hear. It's safe to say, I mean, I have enough clients and enough friends all over the world at this point for me to say we're not getting the whole truth here in America. We're just not. And there's definitely a lot of filtering that's going on, and there's definitely a lot of limiting the information that we can give. And this is going to play into where I'm going with the Pluto return. But just Saturn going into the 3rd house in a natal chart, we think about, you know, are we actively communicating well? Can we share? Do we have a tendency to stop and hesitate or hold back in sharing ideas or communicating or telling people how we feel? So there are positive sides to a Saturn transit in the third. Like, I think about that's when many of my clients will take a really important course, that teaches them something. Or a lot of people will be like, hey, I'm going to start, writing my book. Or my kids graduating to, a new level of education. They're going from kindergarten to elementary school. Or maybe, buying a car, starting a podcast. There are things that Saturn does, especially in Aquarius. It's a Saturn-based sign traditionally, that can be very positive. And in a way, 2021, with Jupiter being in Aquarius, it's talking about, the future is bright. It's going to get a little dim here the next 2 or 3 years, but ultimately the future is bright. And we're being shown collectively all of the issues with what's wrong with America right now. And the fact that we do have a limited freedom of speech. And a lot of people would argue and say that's not the case. I don't really agree with that. Look at some of the people that are getting shadow banned. Look at some of the people whose videos go missing. Look at some of the people who don't come up in search and YouTube and other things. And, this is only going to progressively get worse. I hate to say that, but it's true. So right now, Jupiter being the chart ruler for America's chart, sitting on the moon, is things are getting better. We're moving forward. Everything's gonna be great. We can start traveling again. It's gonna be fine. We can, maybe things are gonna get better in terms of the housing market, because the moon rules the 8th house. Businesses are gonna come back. It'll be great. And so that optimism is helpful, because certainly, we are aware that within 2 to 4 years, things are really going to change in quite a big way, but collectively for everyone. So maybe we're optimistic, and more so now, especially while Jupiter is hovering around the moon. But I'm watching Saturn come into Aquarius more deeply next year, and I'll get into the timing, but very specifically when Saturn fully moves into America's 3rd house. I use Placidus, by the way. And it starts to come into conjunction with the moon somewhere around March, April, within a couple of degrees of 2022. That's when reality is going to hit. We also see in 2022 that the transiting nodes, which will have changed signs, especially in February, the North Node will be in Taurus, the South Node will be in Scorpio, will be squaring America's moon. So there will be the need to speak up. Anybody who knows an Aquarius moon, I have so many Aquarius moons in my family. I have a lot of friends with Aquarius moons, especially in the 3rd house. These people have no filter, and I love them for it. They just say what's on their mind, even if it's going to turn heads. They put the truth out there, no matter how weird it is, no matter how much other people don't like it. And what I see building in this chart in the beginning of 2022 is the nodes come into a square with the moon, and there's going to be limited information getting out. Certain news networks or media networks or whatever may be monitored or filtered. We may find that certain individuals who are used to being able to speak out cannot, and they are being censored or they're being silenced in some way. This is a bigger part of what I see with the Pluto return coming. But for right now, I just want you guys to know things really start to heat up in 2022. We may not see a lot of the results of this limitation in the shutting down of our freedom of speech really happen until the new year, and then play out for about 2 years. When I look at Saturn crossing the moon, especially in a client's chart, it's a time where they are a little bit more depressed, they're a little bit more isolated, it's harder for them to share their emotions or their feelings. There can be issues with women, there can be issues with pregnancy, issues getting pregnant. So I look at this and I go, what's going on? Why is Saturn moving into a conjunction with the moon and squaring the nodes? How are we not allowing people to travel? Why are we putting the pressure on people, or why are people being told to possibly fear leaving their homes? Okay? Because it is the ruler of the 8th, which is going to bring up deep psychological issues, fear. Saturn on the moon, especially at 27, is I think that you're going to see that they're going to possibly like limit like large groups of people meeting or gathering. They're going to tell people possibly stay in your home, you know, don't go anywhere. Jupiter right now is a beacon for what's coming in the future. And you look at what's going on in Australia. Look what's been going on there. People being followed by drones, being told they can't go out, being told they need to stay in their house, they can't go anywhere, that they need to be under lockdown. If you guys think that the lockdowns are over, you're crazy. If anything, and I don't like saying this, if anything, whether or not there is a physical lockdown, that's not really what I'm talking about. But the tightening of the belt in America with our ability to unite, to go and share and exchange ideas, to talk to people about what's going on, to get together and rebel is going to be limited. You're not going to be able to do it the way that you're used to able to do it. We're going to see more things going on where they're not going to show protests, they're not going to show rallies, they're going to shut it down, they're not going to want to encourage people to get together and start talking about what's going on and creating change. So I just want you to think about that. At a 27, it's a document degree, it's a Gemini degree. So it's literally speech, what you're writing on Instagram, what you're putting on Facebook, what you're putting on the internet, what you're required to show, whether it's a vaccine card, whether it's paperwork that you need to travel, to drive in and out of states, to go places. I wonder if that's ultimately going to be something. So now I want to move out of the Saturn transit. And I want to talk a little bit more. One other thing. Saturn will trine and continue to trine America's Uranus right now. So I guess the positive side is that, you know, we do see that I think more jobs are going to be created, more jobs pertaining to technology and moving forward with innovative ideas. So that's positive. And also the building trine from Saturn in Aquarius to Saturn in the 10th is encouraging people to work together and coming together for building something stronger. Okay, Saturn's super strong in Aquarius. Let's move on to the next transit. This is really the one that I'm probably going to spend the most time on, and this is the Pluto return. So Pluto conjunct natal Pluto in this chart. Essentially, you know, really what's going on here is a transit that a human being does not have. Okay, so a Pluto return every 248 odd years, okay, plus or minus a couple years. So we obviously don't live that long yet, so we don't experience that. But Pluto, like any other return, a solar return will kind of show you, you know, what's happening and illuminating, you know, what's going to take place for the next year. A lunar return happens every month, and we're aware of where there's most action and where our emotions are flowing. A Venus return, relationships, whatever. So the Pluto return we don't get. You know, we'll get a Pluto square. We'll get a maybe a Pluto trine, a conjunction, but we definitely don't get those oppositions, and we don't get those conjunctions. So let's just start with this. A return is when a planet comes back to where it was at the time of birth. So in a way, it's completing a cycle. So when we look at America's chart, Pluto, Hades, god of the underworld, is coming back to where he was when America was founded, right? So when we think about the foundation of America, what happened? Like all revolutions or independence situations, there was a lot of blood spilled. There's a lot of drama. People died. There was definitely dealing with a heavy controlling power at the time. And when we look at America's Pluto, it's in the second house. So the power lies in what? Money, control, Capricorn, big business, government authority figures. And so when I think about how the country was founded, and we think about, you know, everything that came together, and in 1776, you know, we pretty much determined that we are going to be independent. I'm going through my whole list of things that I'm going to talk to you guys about, but you know, the Constitution basically allowed us to move forward and set the path for us being the United States. Like that's what happened, and declaring independence, and it was all based off of, you know, the Declaration of Independence, right? That piece of paper, 27 degrees. Here's how I see it. This is going to play out a number of different ways. The Pluto return, on one hand, is saying America is now having to show up and own up to its karma pertaining to how we were founded. Okay, Pluto rules the 12th house. How we chose to seek independence from other countries around the world, specifically Britain, right? But also how that changed our relationship with other countries. When I think about, the founding fathers trying to legitimize America and trying to find support and trying to find allies, and how we sent people overseas to go and talk to France and other countries and basically be like, listen, here, this America thing, it's a real thing. You should probably support us. You should support us and we'll support you. Let's be allies. Help us out so that way we can find independence. And as a result of that, America became very powerful on the world stage. So on a America kind of sense, we're going to see that I think what we're really coming to is this moment in time where we really determine, are we still running this country based off of what we dictated in that document? Are we still actually free? And is there a need to change, manipulate, add, edit, whatever it is that we need to do to this set of papers? And whether you're talking about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of the things that deal with our rights and our personal rights as individuals within this country, especially pertaining to larger powers. Like, so much of the wording and everything is like literally, they created the Declaration of Independence specifically to spell out how the future of America is going to be, and how we are going to ensure that we do not end up in the same situation that we did, where we have some, like king, queen that's just running the show and really controlling the money, the taxes. So we're going to see a lot of stuff pertaining to taxes in America. How are taxes being spent? How is our budget being handled? How are we handling our debt, right? Pluto, you can't talk about Pluto without debt. And not just debt in a sense of money, but also the debt that we have to people who gave their lives for the freedom of America, of all of the wars that we have fought, both on our land. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to come up about our land, because I see it very literally and metaphysically. You can't talk about Pluto without the dead, the souls of the dead. And I'm not just talking about revolutionary soldiers and battles, although that is part of it, but I'm also talking about slaves that died, in America and were brought to America. Slavery, I see like Pluto in Capricorn is really heavily connected to that. And people who we stole essentially and kidnapped and brought from Africa and other countries and forced them into labor, Pluto in the second house. And so now us having to own up to that. The Native Americans who were killed and who lost their land and were, stolen from and manipulated and given all of the things that we gave them in order to kind of like make it okay for us colonizing America, we're going to own up to that too. So on a more metaphysical level, I look at this and go, okay, so it's the souls of the dead, Pluto, within the land of America, the second house, and now we're facing the karma for some of the things that we've done. There's no coincidence that there are things turning up. Granted, I think this happened in Canada, but you're going to see stuff like this in America too, where there is going to be uncovering of truths, some really ugly truths that deal with Pluto themes, torture, what we've hidden, who we've killed off, what we killed, who we stole from, just terrible Pluto stealing, manipulating, raping, pillaging. Like we're having to own up to that, right? And it's hard for me to look at this chart and not go, the voices of these certain individuals or these collective groups, not just those who are alive, but those who are dead are going to start showing up. So we might actually see like excavations of things that are being found, bodies and things that are being found, things that are being uncovered from battles and artifacts and all kinds of things. We may also equally see, because I see Capricorn as being like stone, this continuation of, tearing down certain monuments or tearing down, certain statues that we have of, American heroes, when in reality, some of them were slave owners, or some of them may have not necessarily done their due diligence to actually protect people or treat people humanely. So that will continue. I also wonder if part of the Pluto return is going to be about huge changes regarding big business. So, Pluto and Capricorn, big business, their control, whether or not, we're giving our privacy away, which, we gave a lot of that privacy away. I talked about this in the podcast with I think it was the Patriot Act after 9/11, where now the government and certain, I guess I would say companies or big business or whatever, like our information, especially our financial information, our banking information, our shopping information, we have so many credit cards and other things kind of saved online. How much access can the government have to that? Can they track? What can they see? Are they going to get more controlling with looking into our spending and how we're spending and what we're spending? Is there going to be an implement of taxes for buying things from other countries? Is America going to get weird and start saying, you know what, we're going to start to really kind of isolate ourselves from the world again and kind of cut people off and go, we're focusing on us. It's not about other people, it's about us. Now, on one hand, some people would say, well, if America hadn't done that, 270 odd years ago, we wouldn't be here today. But the question is the way that we went about it, did that really make the world a better place? And I have some clients from all over the world. People argue saying, well, what America did in terms of democracy and setting everything up and helping certain, countries really kind of pave the way for freedom of speech and being able to have more of a better kind of political setup. But other people would say, yeah, but look at how they went about it, right? So yes, America has quite a few planets in the 7th house and we're very visible, but what people don't see is the Pluto-Mercury opposition. And what's going to be highlighted is going to be this transit, Pluto, right now, still hanging out, making oppositions to our natal Mercury, ruler of the 7th. It's fair to say we've made a lot of enemies in the last couple of years. That Pluto opposition to Mercury in the 8th is the fear of, am I going to lose my home? Am I going to lose the ability to feed or clothe my family? Am I going to lose my business? Many small businesses closed because of the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, huge companies like Amazon and all these other Walmart and all this other shit, they are putting small business under. So the very thing that this country was founded on was the ability to come here and have the American dream and be able to be self-sufficient and be able to have freedom. We're losing that. And it's going to start to really become visible at the end of this year when we see even more smaller businesses close. We really start to feel the crunch of what has happened economically over the last 18 months, as well as major inflation. The next transit that's pretty big, and one other thing I'll say, Pluto in opposition to America's Mercury, which is retrograde. Mercury in Cancer is already sensitive, a little fearful, a little hard to communicate, hard to get the message out. Sitting in the 2nd house, in the 8th house in opposition to Pluto in the 2nd. I fear that when Americans start reaching out for help to other countries and being like, help, this is what's going on, this is what they're requiring, they may limit who can come in and out of the United States, who can and cannot live here, documents to traveling here, and we're going to become more of a controlled country, okay? The grip is going to get tighter over the next 2 or 3 years, especially as Pluto gets to 28, 29 degrees of Capricorn. Last year, guys, we saw Saturn go in and out of these degrees, and every single time it happened, we had a shutdown. We were having shutdowns, we were having government workers go out of work, they were talking about putting up a wall. That's the excess of Capricorn, the excess of control. So over the next couple of years, as Pluto not only conjuncts our natal Pluto, it still has to hit 28, 29 degrees of Capricorn, and they're gonna have more of a tighter grip. I fear that if Americans want to reach out, or they want to speak out, or they want to talk about what's going on in this country, either amongst each other or to the world, they will be silenced. You will be looked at as if you're not a patriot, that you're not an American, that you're not looking for what's best for America. Does this sound familiar? Think about the banter and the things that have gone on for the last couple of years as a result of coming out of the transition from a Republican president to a Democratic president, where the last several years there's been a huge focus on America first, America first, America first. This is what we do. It needs to be us, our money, what we're doing. And it's really ruffled the feathers financially, economically, in our relationship with a lot of other countries. And who will or will not do business with us, who will or will not up their taxes for imports and exports, And I think that we're going to see that continuation, especially as Pluto comes into an opposition with our Mercury. It makes me feel like you're going to have situations where certain countries are going to be like, we're not doing business with you anymore. You know, we're not, or it may be America that does that in a bit of a standoff. The next thing that's going on is the Neptune opposed Neptune. Yikes. So Neptune about I see it as a higher octave of love. Okay, first of all, Venus, but Neptune is all about our spiritual perception, whether it's our heads in the clouds and we're not seeing things clearly, or we're being led down a path that's not what we think it is, or more about us being able to cut through the fog and become aware of the spiritual lesson. Neptune can go either way, but certainly Neptune, square Neptune or Neptune on an angle, if anybody has had that, is a very challenging transit. And so it's distorted, right? Especially when it's in these mutable signs. Neptune in Pisces is so strong. And I think that off the bat, when I look at the Neptune in Pisces in opposition to the natal Neptune in Virgo, it's the distortion about health and wellness in this country. What it means to be healthy. What it means to eat healthy, what it means to be spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, working healthy, health topics, mental health. You can't talk about Pisces and Virgo without talking about the way that mental health affects the physical body. So mental health is a huge issue moving forward, especially when Jupiter joins the gang next year. And we start to become aware of where we have been manipulated, misled. People are going to get crazier and stronger with their beliefs. The spiritual people may get more spiritual. They may really drink the Kool-Aid. You're going to see cults and all kinds of shit. You're going to see religious people become even more fanatics. So practicing finding that middle ground is going to be really important. And it's hard to do when you're in the midst of a Neptune opposition like this, because nobody's listening to each other. It's distorted. Virgo's trying to give details, trying to give facts, trying to get information, trying to sort, trying to sift. And that may very well be that the rest of the world, and I've seen this a lot of people in other countries on all kinds of forums being like, Americans, just wear your mask. And, that Neptune in the ninth is, doctors, lawyers, political figures in other countries trying to get through to America and trying to be like, don't you see all the facts and the numbers? Very Virgo. And Neptune in the third can basically be us being like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. This is our truth. So there's going to be a real crisis pertaining to what is truth. And are we speaking the same language? Are we arguing things but really not having any facts behind what we're arguing? Are we spreading false or misleading information? That's a real question that I have, especially because this transit Neptune in opposition to natal Neptune is a part of a mutable T-square, which is squaring our natal Mars in the 7th, Mars being the ruler of the 4th and the 5th. So it's almost in a way instigating a war, okay, like a civil war. And I don't like saying that, but it is instigating a civil war between us online, on our news networks, our third house stuff, our radio, I watch Fox versus I watch, MSNBC versus NPR versus this, they said that, and then it's causing conflict. So in a way, we may see that because other people are trying to intervene and trying to help us in other countries, we might start seeing that limited and that we're having less and less of those networks come in. We may also find that as a result of the Neptune, square Neptune and Mars, there's more conflicts, fighting, arguments, brawls. I mean, it's like I had somebody telling me they were getting off the airplane the other day and there was a full-on brawl in an airplane, right? And it's like, yeah, okay, people are going to be people. People are going to do what they're going to do. But I feel like I've heard more brawls about airplanes recently because of masks or the vaccines or whatever than ever before. Look at the stuff that happened just recently. I guess somebody was telling me about the opening game that they had in LA. There was like a brawl going on at, preseason for football. People are fighting, right, arguing, which is ironic. It's preseason. It's the same team, whatever, or the same city. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's like the mutable squares when you have Neptune and Mars involved. Nobody's listening to each other. People are playing the victim. They're reacting. They're fabricating stories. They're telling lies. They're bullshitting each other. And they're instigating some kind of a quarrel. So it's not just Neptune square Neptune, it's square Mars as well, which I feel like if there is any potential war, I have to say this going on, because that Mars has been activated because we had an eclipse that was conjunct America's Mars this last June, and we're going to see the results of that happening at the end of this year when we have a full moon in Sag, and then we're going to have a Mars retrograde in 2022 that will go over that. The question is there a war going on, but we're not letting that information out, or we're not aware of it, or is it being covered? Is it being hidden? Is it being covered up? And when I think about Pisces and Gemini, is there's stuff going on, especially pertaining to the Navy, movement with the Navy or movement overseas, or there's some kind of something brewing overseas that we're trying to contain and we don't want people to know what's happening. So the Neptune square Neptune is very confusing. It's very challenging. It's hard to cut through, and it's really hard to find facts. So in a way, this year, with Saturn hanging out and starting to move into a semi-sextile with Neptune, we want to cut through all the bullshit now. We want to get this information out now. I want to make these videos now, like this year, because by the time we get to next year, who knows, people who have platforms like this, if they're going to be able to keep putting these videos out, who knows if it's going to get out there, right? So much that's going on in the world is not being released into the media, at least here in the States. And so we need to wake up and start questioning, where is this coming from, and why are we being kind of spoon-fed certain narratives but not aware of what's going on? Why do we not know that there's major earthquakes going on in foreign countries? Why are we not aware of, things that are going on pertaining to health and research and all kinds of other things? America has become so consumed with greed and with money and with business and with surviving, because we've been made to feel like we should just keep working and not ask any questions and just stay on the beaten path. We are on the verge of a complete revolution and a rebellion. And as soon as Americans wake the fuck up and realize that part of what's going on is that we have been basically from birth kind of told the plan, you go to school, you get a good job, you just pay taxes, you don't ask any questions, you keep making money, you buy a house, you keep buying. The Pluto return is a lot about us being slaves to consumerism. So it's a completely different type or idea of slavery this time around. In a way, it is all-encompassing. It is how we are a slave to the system, how we are a slave to our jobs, how we are a slave to working just to buy things, just so the government can continue to keep taking money, and, millions and billions of dollars go missing every year in the budget. We see little blips on the radar, like we saw, I think in this last year, like how much the Pentagon spent on seafood, and it was like a ton of money, and there's all this money going out the window for all these things happening that we're not aware of, right? Like all these like secret, studies, and, just money that vanishes and goes missing. The money that's vanishing and going missing, especially when it comes to military and the budget, for what we're spending on acts of war, like what we're spending on what we're buying, what we're selling, are we buying or selling materials that other countries need for war? And now we're going to be the ones who are going to actually pay the price for it, because we've sold all kinds of stuff to other countries, because we have found ways to actually make money as a country as a result of another country going to war, or we go to war with other countries because, we feel like it's going to benefit us in some way, or manipulate oil, or do this or do that. Like, the buck's going to stop here, guys. So when we look at this, I guess the final thing that I really want to kind of touch on is what happens, during the Pluto return. So we talked about Saturn conjunct the South Node, Pluto conjunct Pluto, Pluto opposition to Mercury. So that's also the business, the secret business, what America is actually doing with the money, where it's going. There may be something at the end of this year. I'll get to that, of what comes out. And then the Neptune square Mars. So unpacking in a way what Pluto in Capricorn is going to bring up. Crisis, destruction, trauma, what's been hidden, what we're not aware of. Pluto can be literal or metaphysical deaths when you think about it. And there's definitely going to be some time periods that I think are going to be probably the most prominent. So I want to talk about that. The first one is going to be in February of 2022. And this is when the peak happens, because Pluto is going to move to 27 degrees. So that will be the very first peak. And that's mid-month. It looks like the actual return. So crazy. The actual return is going to start around February 20th. Does something happen that day? I don't know. I will say that the moon moves into Libra. It's going to come into a square with Pluto, conjunct Pluto. And shortly after, both Mars and Venus are going to follow in these same degrees, which will be heightened February 26, 2022 through March 4th. Mars and Pluto are the badasses of astrology. When these two get together, especially in Capricorn, it's cold-blooded, literally cold-blooded. And Venus joins the bunch, kind of being like, whoa, you know, Venus can be war, believe it or not. Mars is war, but when Venus comes in, it's definitely dealing with whether or not something is fair, whether or not something is going to move forward, whether or not something is balanced. Venus wants harmony, but when she's with Pluto and when she's with Mars, all goes. What's fascinating to me is that from the very beginning of the year, as the North Node starts moving into Taurus, it's actually coming into a trine with America's Pluto. So it is saying, like, it is trying to stabilize the future of where we're going economically, the future of our food, the future of our businesses, and that there is some purpose or some stability to regenerize something. So are they going to print more money? Is what I'm wondering. You know, is the government going to print more money? Are we going to have a crisis at the end of the year? And are they going to try to push forward to say, hey, we have another relief package? The government wants to give us money. Pluto in Capricorn, Venus in Capricorn, Mars in Capricorn. So I want you to pay attention to what's happening then. The second wave of when things get kind of intense also is going to be July of 2022. And this is going to be happening because at this point Pluto is retrograding. So, you know, it stops, it retrogrades, it appears to go backwards. So the second hit is going to take place in July of 2022. Ironically, right around America's birthday, and also when all of these planets are moving into Cancer. So I kind of feel like the peak is going to get really wild July 13th through about July 20th, as all these planets move into the 8th house of America's chart, and we start looking at, you know, what is happening, what is going on with our finances, what is going on with our homes. Like, that could be a breaking point for the housing crisis stuff. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's the time to watch. It peaks again in December of 2022. And for a number of reasons, Pluto is coming back, so it's going to be the next hit to 27 degrees. We also are in the midst of having a Mars retrograde at this time in Gemini, and America's natal Mars is in Gemini. So it's actually going to retrograde over our natal Mars, and it's going to activate that as well as activating the eclipse point. I'll go as far as saying I think it's very possible that America is heading to war at the end of 2022, or there's something brewing like that. With the squares to Neptune and Jupiter, we may not know exactly what's happening or where it's happening. We may be getting bits and pieces of something is getting ready to start. I don't like saying that, but it's true. And with those oppositions and those squares to each other, facts are going to be so important. Clarity is going to be so important. I plan on still doing this, so we'll do that as we get there. But those mutable squares are very interesting. To me, it's like reminiscent of what has happened in the summer of 2020 and also this recent summer of 2021 when we had retrogrades in Gemini and eclipses in Gemini, and it squared the nodes. There was like a lot of like trying to cut through the bullshit, trying to see what's real. So I think that there can be news brewing that there is some kind of confrontation or conflict that is coming pertaining to war. And then finally, we've got the last one and that really actually bleeds from November of 2022 clear into December, by the way, because the second hit of the Pluto return is actually going to be in December of 2022. And a time to watch is going to be when Venus and Mercury join the bunch. So that's going to be like right around Christmas and New Year's of 2022. And Mercury will go retrograde over those degrees as well. So there's definitely still a lot of like, what's going on with our money? What's happening with, control? What's happening with other countries? Are we isolating ourselves from them? What are we doing? How are we looking at our security, our food, our resources? That's the second house. It's a Taurus house. So it's being more focused on what we have or what we have control over. And then finally, we've got, I think the tail end of it is going to be the fall of 2023. Now, briefly, Pluto will move into Aquarius, and this shift is going to happen in March of 2023, going into April. Then it will retrograde back into Capricorn, conjunct America's Pluto again. This will be in October of 2023. This is the final hit. And then it is going to move forward in 2024, and it's going to start to kind of ease up. I mean, it's going to be in effect really until about January of 2024. But at that point in time, that's when it's going to start to calm down. But then Pluto is in Aquarius, and we're off to the races. And, even when it retrogrades, it will retrograde back into Capricorn one final time in the fall of 2024. But it won't hit our Pluto. It'll get close, but it won't hit our Pluto. Then Pluto is going to stay in Aquarius from the beginning of 2025 on. It will not retrograde back into Capricorn. So just that shift in itself, I'm going to do a whole video on that because that's coming pretty soon. Those are going to be the times that are going to be most significant. I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's coming at the end of this year, because there are some interesting cycles that I see just kind of like in closing and what may happen. Okay. I'm looking at October of 2021. What I see during this month is Saturn has retrograded back to the South Node, so it will be conjunct the South Node. So we see that loss of control of finances, loss of control of money. Perhaps people are getting a little anxious about what's going on financially. I have a theory, and this is just my theory based off of the astrology. My theory is that the writing is already on the wall in October of 2021. We've got a mess of planets that are in Libra, Sun, Mars, Mercury. Mercury will be going retrograde over America's Saturn, and we're assessing what's going on with the job markets. Are we going back? Are we opening things up again? What's happening? What are we doing? And in a way, October is a great month because there is a lot of support from Saturn and also the node to communicate and get everything out. Like, if there's anything you need to do on a business level, a financial level, a personal level, October is a really great month to like seek assistance, talk to people, work things out, because that's your last stop before things start getting crazy. Because from December of 2021 through about spring of 2022, things are going to become more challenging and we're going to be more limited and we're not going to have as much freedom or as much kind of ability to create change. But this month, I see all these planets that are in Libra coming into a square with America's Pluto and also the South Node, Saturn transit. So that makes me feel like something is already brewing in October. Perhaps maybe, major institutions or banking, business or even like major business. Like, we're starting to see that maybe we're not as optimistic about what's going on economically or financially in America. But you guys know how it is in America. Once we get into the, anything after September, it's like, oh, it's the holidays. You got to buy clothes for your dog. You got to buy pumpkins. You got to start getting your Christmas stuff wrapped. You look at these commercials, buy this. Like, there's such a push at the end of the year to really kind of boost up the economics of what's going on in our country. And also just seeing like, okay, the year-end reports, Macy's did this company did this. Like, they want people to feel optimistic about, oh, it's the end of the year, we did so well. When in reality, starting in October, I think a lot of companies and big businesses are going to start looking at the numbers and reporting and going like, something's not making sense. Like, we're not doing as well as we thought we were. Whether or not they report that, we'll see. But I don't think it matches up with Pluto is basically what I'm getting at. Then once we get Venus into Capricorn, which will be happening at the end of October, going into the beginning of December. This is when Venus is in her shadow, okay? So I believe the shadow is somewhere around, I think it's like, actually, you know what? Let's just look at it. Give me a second. So I want to be really specific with this. Okay, so Venus will turn retrograde in Capricorn around December 19th, and it'll reach 26 degrees, which is important because it has to do with the eclipse in November. Mental note. But when it retrogrades, it'll retrograde back to $12 degrees? 11? It's 11. Okay. So as soon as Venus enters 11 degrees of Capricorn, she's in the shadow period. I will do a video on this. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be important, really, for relationships and for finances. But for the sake of this, it's just how it's going to affect America. Venus rules our 10th house. It also rules our 6th house. So it's our workforce. It's where we work, how we work, the conditions in how we work, health and wellness, if we're going back to work, if we're healthy enough to work, the health of our businesses. So Venus is going to enter into its shadow on November 17th. Okay, so shadow meaning this is the same degree that it will retrograde back through. The days that I think are important are when Venus touches with Pluto. And this is going to be like December 6th. Through about the 19th. So when Venus retrogrades, she'll spend quite a bit of time. She starts to slow down and she'll conjunct Pluto. She retrogrades at 26 degrees. Venus and Pluto, power, money, big power. Big business, what's going on with big business, whether or not government's getting involved in big business. Are they trying to break it down? Are we reporting? Are the banks reporting? I see second house as banks, like we've got a problem. There's no fucking way they're going to tell people what's going on because we're coming out of what will be almost 2 years of a pandemic, a very rocky economy, inflation. We've printed a ton of money and people are already on edge. So my prediction, even though I don't like it, is that shit is already hitting the fan with big business and banking. We're going to see that we're over our heads. There's going to be some crisis going on. And Venus-Pluto makes me feel like the government or the banks are hiding a secret, and a dirty one at that. This information, I don't believe, will become visible probably until either when Venus conjuncts Pluto again, which could be around Christmas of 2021, although I don't think so. It could be when Mercury becomes conjunct Venus around December 29th. This could be big news revolving banks and all that stuff. Venus will oppose America's Mercury in Cancer in the 8th. And what will manifest, I think, is going to be some news revolving around finances in the markets right around New Year's. It may not become highlighted until the moon shows up on January 3rd and we become aware of the news or what they're doing to sort or sift through some of this stuff. There can be another government shutdown, government workers, another lockdown even, businesses closed, because it's all hovering around the late degrees of Capricorn. Venus will continue to go retrograde until she conjuncts the sun. And I feel like the United States is somehow limiting international travel. And there may be the beginning of us not allowing, people in and out of the country or international inbound, outbound. That's possible. It's the 9th house ruler. And then Venus is going to dip down, like I said, to about 11 degrees. Now, these are days that you also want to watch. This is when the sun and Pluto align with natal Pluto. This is going to be around January 15th through the 17th, where there is a full moon on January 17th, 2022, sun conjunct Pluto in opposition to the moon. This is when it's going to start to break, when Venus goes direct. So it will be about the 17th of January on. Technically, Venus will go direct around 11 degrees with the moon on January 29th. And the truth is going to come out as a result of Mercury going retrograde in Capricorn, conjuncting Pluto, January 29th. So something's falling apart, something's breaking down, something's dying, something's being let go, something's falling apart, something's being controlled, manipulated. A Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde all crossing Pluto, something stinks, literally. And then I think the big whopper is going to be when Venus goes direct. Venus comes into a conjunction with Pluto again. So first we'll see Mercury conjunct Pluto, where there's information that finally comes to the surface about what happened, what scandal, what bank scammed a bunch of people, what the government did with a bunch of missing money, what the truth was about the finances, what they didn't tell people in December. And people are not going to be happy because it's really going to affect our pocketbooks. It's going to affect our ability to get assistance, food, necessities, right? And it's going to be controlled in some way. Now, some people would look at this and go, they're going to freak out. People are going to be rationing things. You're not going to have a limit to money. There can be issues with banks with being able to get your money. There can be shortages of food. Here's my advice. You might want to just stock up. Have some cash. Have some food. Have everything at your house. Have everything ready to go. I'm not saying this to promote fear. I'm just saying have what you need, right? Think about what was happening when Saturn was in these degrees last year. People were freaking out trying to buy all the toilet paper and there was no toilet paper. You go to fucking Walmart and there's no food on the shelves. People are panic buying, massive buying. It's greed, it's food, it's masses of things. It's like a Taurus energy. It just goes, this is mine. So is there going to be a grab where the government grabs a hold and seizes the banks and doesn't allow people to, exchange money, to hold money, to have money, to take out money? What's going to happen? Just have like food and stuff at your house going into the new year. Have enough frozen Capricorn and stuff that is dried storage, things are preserved or pickled, things like that. Because I'm telling you, I don't like saying this, but if you thought last year was extreme, you haven't seen anything. Because going into 2022, it's going to get pretty fucking wild. February 10th and 11th are very extreme with the Mercury-Pluto conjunction where shit hits the fan. Now we're aware of it. And the sun is coming into a conjunction with America's moon. Now we're like, oh shit, we can't do this. We can't do that. We have to show a vax card. We have to show proof of something. We can and cannot go in and out of this state. Then Venus comes and joins the group. And this is the last day that I'm most interested in. This will be when Venus and Mars come into a conjunction with Pluto. So the moon will highlight this February 26th through the 27th. But Mars and Pluto are going to be conjunct during the Pluto's return on March 1st through the 3rd. And Venus will be there as well. So really it's going to be, whatever is going on doesn't really break out till the end of January. And it'll be from the end of January till March of 2022. And at that time, Jupiter's in Pisces, the sun's in Pisces, everything's going to come into an opposition with our natal Neptune and square Mars. The United States is going to try to scare people into thinking that there's something going on globally that's not happening. And they're either going to try to keep the world from us or us from the world. Hopefully you guys can still see this video and it's not taken down, because I have a feeling that just the more that I talk about this and tell the truth and just tell you my perspective of what I see coming, as challenging and scary as it may seem, this will have to play out over a period of 2 to 3 years. And we have to really look at what the bigger picture is. Where are we really going? The nodes at that time will be in Scorpio and Capricorn, which is yours versus mine, or what we have together versus what is mine. Thankfully, all these planets do trine the North Node. So it's saying there does need to be a fall. There does need to be a dissolving. There does need to be this need to embrace all of the ugly things that we don't want to embrace. We need to see it. We need to unveil all the ugly truths. We need to tear down the systems and the structures that are not working, that are fundamentally broken or rotten and negative or evil or dark, and start over. We can't continue to be in a situation where we just slap a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Like, if something is going to fall apart. If there's going to be a crash, it will be at this time. Okay? Like, seriously. So I encourage you guys to really pay attention. The writing will be on the wall before we get to this point. You know, I've been studying the eclipse that's coming in mid-November. In the late degrees of Taurus, it'll be conjunct Algol. And it's going to be around the same degrees as when the North Node moves into that same degree, I think 26, 27, 28 degrees of Taurus in February. So in a way, the issues are going to start happening about as early as the fall of this year, even if it doesn't become visible. It will make sextiles and aspects to Neptune, like all these planets in Capricorn will sextile Neptune, and then Neptune will sextile the North Node. So in my mind, part of me wonders, are the United States going to make a big ordeal over the new variant, you know, of what's going on with COVID and the Delta variant? And are they going to go, oh my God, it's another variant, we got to shut everything down, boom. And then we go into another, what may be a lockdown until fall of 2022. And further in the hole economically or with debt. Do they know that there is a looming banking crisis coming? That's what I think. I think they know the jig's up. I think we've printed way too much money. I think that you're going to see a lot of people trying to get out, trying to sell their homes. You're going to see a huge sell-off of things that are going to start happening because the big business, they know. The government knows it's coming. It's a house of cards. It's just a matter of when it falls. So they're going to start putting things in place, getting everything ready, I believe, so that way when they do decide to come out to the world and go, oh my God, the Delta variant, we got to shut down again, the economy is going to take a dump and they're going to blame it on that. So be smart, guys. Be prepared. Be aware that the things that are coming over the next 2 years with Saturn coming into a square with the transit nodes are really setting us up to do a lot of heavy lifting, to do a lot of work on a personal level, but on a collective level as well. So because of some of the stuff that's happening, because of things that are going, it's challenging, but it also inspires me to just keep showing up and like wanting to be like, this is what it is. Whether you like it or not, I'm not here to discuss politics. This is just the astrology. So hopefully this was helpful, you know, and I hope to come back. I will do a touch on this because I do want to do another video where I circle back around to this, especially in either December, but sometime between December and February. You can come back to this video and you can watch it. We can see what if my predictions played out and how they played out. Obviously, a lot of this is just my interpretation of the astrology. In the end, I'm still very optimistic that we're being given an opportunity to completely rebuild the financial structures and really own up to some of the things that we haven't necessarily done very well, where we haven't put our family first, where we haven't put our security first, where we've had a false sense of security in America, where we've been using fear to scare people into thinking that they don't have the right to equality in how we're living. Hopefully it's going to push us further in the direction of doing something about homelessness, especially looking at that moon in the third house. You know, I don't like saying this, but I wonder what's going to happen when Pluto comes, you know, into Aquarius. What happens when Saturn comes into Aquarius and conjuncts this moon? Are we going to have a lot of people living in their cars because they can't afford to live anywhere else? Are people going to stop buying these McMansions and move into Winnebagos and just be free? Because that's what people really want. They don't want to feel limited to any one particular place. So the revolution is happening. It's going to be going on for the next couple of years. I'll keep checking in and doing these astrology minority reports. Unless I go missing, then you know who did it. Just kidding. I'm not going to put that out there. So now I want to get into looking a little bit deeper, and I'm going to show you the chart for America's 2021 return, the solar return. So this is going to be the birthday chart for America this year, and it's going to take us from July of 2021 into July of 2022. So if you take a look at this chart, we've got a Aquarius rising 29 degrees. So this is the same ascendant as the impending full moon that's going to be coming up around the 22nd of August. So even as early as, you know, what's coming at the end of August of 2021, we are going to see that it's going to definitely put the spotlight on America because of that 29 degrees. So that's why I wanted to get this video out soon. The sun is always going to be in Cancer, and in this chart it lands in the 5th house, and we've got the moon that is in Taurus and it's in the 3rd. Okay, so let's break the chart down. The ruler of this chart is either going to be Saturn or Aquarius or Uranus, depending on how you look at it. I'm going to look at both, but I would prefer to look at Uranus first. So we've got Uranus and Taurus in the second house. So fluctuations in terms of values, money, food, resources, within a close conjunction to the moon. So it's within 5 degrees. Technically, the moon is going to be landing in the third house just barely, but it's close enough to feel the vibration. So the moon Uranus is changes pertaining to home, property, land, values, movement, a lot of innovations. Like moon Uranus is innovative when it comes to ideas and sharing of ideas. You can't look at the moon Uranus conjunction from the second, third cusp without thinking about innovations in how we use money, how we trade money, what we do with money, and whether or not there is going to be upgrades in currency, in food, innovations in how we grow food. Do we have enough food? Especially because Uranus is in a square to Saturn. So just even thinking back, I mean, I think about what was going on around 4th of July, look at what was going on, you know, at least here in the States. We were coming off of that Saturn-Uranus square. It was very strong from mid-June going into early July. So the moon being conjunct Uranus in a tight square, not only with Saturn in the 12th, but also Mars in the 6th. So we have a fixed T-square, with really the emphasis, because the moon is there, kind of saying like we're shaking up, we're radically changing things, which makes sense. You know, shortly after 4th of July, at the end of July, going into the beginning of August, we saw that mask mandates came back. There were sudden changes with, you know, what was going on with having to wear the mask, numbers going up, all kinds of things. And how that actually affected businesses, specifically with the square to the 6th house, is like the beauty industry, the food industry, hospitality, service, hotels, and all of those things that are in the 6th. The moon Uranus being in the 3rd, which also deals with education and the squares to the 6th house, I feel like how whatever is going on in the world health-wise is affecting our ability to educate children, whether or not we're going more in the direction of doing education that is going to be more digital or anything like that. And just the friction. I mean, we're going to see friction all year long, which is really going to be highlighted and has been highlighted while the sun has been in Leo. We've seen it. And it's also going to get highlighted quite a bit again when the sun makes its ingress into Aquarius in the new year. So kind of building off of what I was saying, kind of like this feeling that once we get to the beginning of the year, we seem to think that things might open up again, but I look at Saturn square Uranus and also Saturn sitting in the 12th house is us having that isolation, that pullback, that being controlled, not being allowed to get out. So if we look at Saturn being also co-ruler of this chart, either which way you look at it, Saturn opposes Mars and Venus and squares Uranus. So it's bringing up some of these same themes. If we can travel, if we can speak, if we can communicate, if we can share ideas, and especially in, I think, like public or open forums with that moon being in the 3rd house. I do feel like, once again, you know, freedom of speech, of sharing our emotions, of sharing ideas, of sharing our values is going to come up and bump up against Saturn. What I do like is that Jupiter is in Pisces and it's on the ascendant, so it does make me feel like there is a opportunity for a new beginning. There is a renewal. There is an ability for us to go in a different direction. There is a new vision. There is a purpose. And so, you know, it is retrograde, but it is in positive, harmonious aspects, both to Uranus. It's creating about a 12-degree sextile. It's also making a slight trine to the sun in Cancer. So it's more emotional. It's watery, right? We also see that the sun sextiles the moon. So something that's going on, you know, especially when I think about how this is affecting people who have like Taurus or Cancer placement, you're getting very much upgraded and aware of changes because it's creating a sextile from Taurus to Cancer. So when I look at the sextiles from the 2nd house to the 5th house, it's what are we valuing? Are we valuing resources? Are we valuing independence? Are we valuing youth, children? because the sun in the 5th house is very strong. It's about being authentic. It's about having a great deal of pride and, you know, being itself. If America already has a reputation for like being this whole like, you know, patriot, you know, country, the next immediate year, even more so. You're going to see that I think America is really going to rebel with that 29 degrees Aquarius rising against what other people think or what other people believe. Sun creating the inconjunct or the quincunx to Saturn also makes me feel like the youth are going to rebel, women are going to rebel, you know, mothers are going to rebel, in all of the best ways, in the ways that are basically going to be like, we're not going to stand for this. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff that's going to come up about reproductive rights, women's rights, about children's rights, about how we're nurturing and caring and taking care of them. What is safety? What is security? Are we ensuring that people have food, clothes, you know, a roof over their head? Are we taking care of those who really don't have enough? That's something that I think that we're going to really think about, and we're going to kind of mull over a little bit over the next year. This may not really kick into overdrive, though, until sometime between, I would say, Pisces season and July. So between, you know, end of February and July of next year. I think you're going to see women get stronger. You know, I think when I see the sun sextile, the moon Uranus is like, you know, women rolling up their sleeves and joining and helping, cooking meals, taking care of other people's kids, making clothes, assisting, helping, and really kind of paving the way forward for being like, this is how we nurture, this is how we care. So I think I would really watch some of those topics going into 2022, especially anything pertaining to, you know, youth as well. You know, youth kind of stepping up and basically taking the world on and playing more of an active role in where we're going with our future. You know, young people, they are the future, and I think they have a lot to say about what's going on in the world right now and how things are kind of being set up going into this next year. A lot of these predictions are just going to be, like I said, from July of 2021 to July of 2022. Something I like to do is like a predictive method also is sometimes I will put the solar return over a natal chart and I'll flip it around and look at it a couple different ways. And one thing I will tell you that I do notice about looking at this is in America's chart, our moon is 27 degrees of Aquarius. So it's sitting along the ascendant of the solar return chart, and it's in the 12th. So I see that as probably people needing or feeling like they have to go back into their homes, or they're being kind of restricted back into their homes, or they're feeling limited with their ability to travel in some way, especially during the peak of Aquarius season in 2022. We also see that in the solar return chart, the North Node is at 10 degrees of Gemini. That is America's Uranus. So there's lots of innovation in technology, in vehicles, in what we know about vehicles and mobility and getting around, probably the birth of what's going to be another big social media platform. We also see that Mercury is at 21 degrees in the 4th house in this chart. That is America's Mars. So there's definitely a lot of like friction, I think, going on, especially from about February through June of 2022, pertaining to our freedom and our ability to move around and be free, whether that's driving state to state or city to city. I do think of that as like it is natally in America's chart, their 7th house. So that moving to the 4th is like, are we having conflicts in that? Are we having a war with ourselves? Are we having a war within our neighborhood? Are we having a war within our country and what we're speaking and what we're saying as a country, and whether or not we are agreeing with the statement that we're making to the world? I don't know. The South Node in Pluto in America's chart moves into the solar return 12th house. So definitely that's kind of mirroring a lot of what I was saying about this kind of like possible heaviness, lockdown, isolation, feeling more kind of distanced from the world happening, especially in the new year in 2022. The midheaven in this chart is 12 degrees of Sag, and that's our natal ascendant. So somehow America starts making world news in some way or another, which can be quite quite big news, especially pertaining to Sagittarian topics like what's going on with our education, what's going on with our court system and our laws and our regulations. Believe it or not, that's actually Jupiter. That's not Saturn. And somehow that kind of comes out into the world and everybody can see it. And it might be something that is, Americans not agreeing with our way of relating to other countries and kind of speaking out against things, which is kind of mirroring what I was seeing. And America's Mercury, which is usually in the 8th house at 24 degrees of Cancer, falls into an opposition with Pluto in the 11th. So once again, things pertaining to home, families, children, women, business, independent business, smaller business, family businesses wanting to come up against whether or not the U.S. government is actually supporting their growth or their expansion, right? Or some kind of control pertaining to home, family, children, where kids can and cannot go, if kids have to be vaccinated, if kids have the freedom, to do what they usually do, which is, run around and be free. So that's just kind of off the cuff, something that I notice about this. We did talk about kind of the transits that have happened, especially around the 4th of July, and even just putting the transits on America's chart. It's mirroring all of these things. I also want to show you briefly the progress chart for America. So this is the progressions of how they're moving by degree. And this is an interesting chart. Virgo rising, 8 degrees. Sun in Pisces in the 7th. Neptune has been there for the last couple of years, hovering, right? Kind of like pulling wool over our eyes, creating an illusion about, it's us against the world or what we're doing versus the world, especially regarding a virus or a pandemic, Neptune. But in this chart, we've got a couple interesting things happening. I noticed that the moon, which has been moving through Aquarius, is still in Aquarius. It's in 11 degrees right now in mid-August. But it did cross America's south node, and it also crossed the progressed Pluto. So if we look back in time, it was like August of 2020. The progressed moon at the time was in Capricorn, and it conjunct the south node. So this huge kind of blowout situation revolving around, we need to get back to work. We need to be able to have our homes. Definitely a lot of drama pertaining to whether or not we can or cannot leave our homes. And then shortly after, in September and October, the moon conjunct progressed Pluto in this chart. So that was really a peak of feeling restricted or kind of tied down. And then the moon broke into Aquarius in November. And so there's a sense of freedom. We had the moon in Aquarius in the progress chart cross the south node. And that happened in April of this year of 2021. So definitely that could have manifested as like a lot of people, unfortunately, feeling like they lost their freedom or they lost their ability to be able to, make money the way that they were making money, or really starting to feel the crunch of not being able to pay their bills or pay their mortgages or pay their landlords, whatever, especially with the moon in Aquarius. Right now it's sitting at 11 degrees and it's getting ready to come into a conjunction in the new year with our progressed Mercury, which is really strong, April, May, June. And that's going to be an interesting time too, because, we're going to see that Saturn will be in those same degrees transit-wise. So April, May is a time I'm really looking for in America's chart for a number of reasons. One is because of this conjunction and Saturn being there, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be trying to find ways to be more independent with how they're making their money. They may be wanting to start new businesses or starting new groups. I think of like Aquarius as being like communal. So that happening in America's 6th house, we become more open to the idea of talking about new networks, new healthcare, new social platforms, new ways of being able to be of service. So Saturn will hang out there as well. Unfortunately, that's going to get squared by the nodes. In my opinion, some of the most important things that we really need to talk about next year is what we're doing to take better care of the environment, what we're doing to be able to create workspaces and jobs and things that are actually going to be beneficial for us moving forward, especially in advancing some of our technological skills and health and wellness as a whole for our country, ensuring that people have somewhere to live, they have skills. Perhaps maybe we're working more with the homeless and not casting them aside, but more focusing on being able to help them integrate back into society, have health care, have a place to live, and also being given all the tools that they need in order to thrive. So we're going to start talking about coming together, what the community needs, and also what we're doing for the environment. Jupiter's going to hover around our progressed sun next year, ruler of the 12th, and it's also, Jupiter is the ruler of the 4th. So I can see situations where I don't think we're going to see as many people wanting to immigrate to America. I don't, at least not for the next 2 years. And I also wonder if there is going to be a mass exodus of people wanting to leave the States. Especially when Jupiter crosses over the sun and people start looking at things going like, is there somewhere else better to live? Should we be going somewhere else? Is it like this in other parts of the world? What else is out there? People might become more adventurous and open to the idea of trying to live in other places or trying to reach people in other places, especially because the sun is going to shine a light on, whether or not we have freedom. Right? Because it's in Pisces. So I think of it as kind of like a Neptune sign. When I lay this chart over America's natal, we do see that we are coming into pretty soon. Let me flip this around. There we go. Pretty soon we are going to see also America's progressed lunar return. And so it's almost like coming up on, what would be something similar to a solar or Saturn return, excuse me. So that's going to be another thing to watch. And that's usually kind of the setup for some more karmic situations happening. So that's going to be going on around October of 2022. So like I said earlier in the video, a lot of this stuff is playing out, clear until 2024, but 2022 seems to be the hot spot. That month of like October, November, December, that 3-month period at the end of 2022, I think is probably going to be the most active because we have the progressed lunar return, because we're going to have Saturn there as well, that there is this huge focus on communicating and coming out and talking about truths, sharing truths, the truth of what's going on here in America, the truth of what's really happening in terms of the information that's being released, and people wanting to kind of stand out. Like the people who really stand up for human rights, individual rights, over the next couple of years, especially in this country, may ultimately go down in history the same way some of our forefathers have. And I think it's really important to really put that out there. Because in a way, we're preparing for Pluto to go into Aquarius. It'll take some time for Pluto to hit these degrees, but it may be very possible that some of the people who speak out, some of the personalities, some of the media stars, some of the people who are on social media, some of the news anchors and people who really come out with the truth, expose the truth, talk about the truth, even if it's not pretty, even if it's not popular, even if it's scary, may actually go down as in history as being people who were a part of the revolution and the rebirth of the United States of America. Books that are written, speeches that are made, statements that are made. It's going to be huge, and I'm excited to see ultimately what happens eventually when Pluto crosses these degrees way down the line, and if it's a part of a radical change for humanity. So this is a really exciting thing for me because I look at, almost like we're going to have, the birth of what would have been almost similar to like our forefathers. Like we think about, like George Washington, and we think about, John Hancock and Benjamin Franklin, and like all of these people who were responsible for like, kind of coming out and speaking up against, Britain and the country that was really kind of running us as a business, right, and farming us out in a way. And they stood up, and as a result of them standing up, we are here now. So I hope that inspires you guys to really look at the direction of where things are going differently. Like I said, I'm definitely going to come back, and I do plan on doing a check-in because I want to do like I want to touch base on some of this stuff, especially sometime between December and February. It was important for me to get this out and get this out before the end of this year. Also, just to kind of build off of the podcast that I just did. I encourage all of you guys to remain optimistic in spite of some of the heavy things that we kind of spoke about. And there may even be more things. I'll continue to go back to this video or go back to these charts and make more notes, and people will make comments about things and have questions, and I'll come back and we'll discuss some of that stuff. Hopefully this was helpful. Remember that a lot of this is a part of America's rebirth and the direction where we're going, and being able to really reevaluate if we can continue going the way that we are now, spiritually, financially, globally. We have a huge mess to clean up, and there is a lot of things that we are having to take responsibility for that really date back to, like I said, the founding of this country. So I'm hoping that this purge and this clearing is giving us a complete clean slate and the ability to do better than we have done, and move more in the direction of equality all around. So if this inspires you, please leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. I will be back and be giving more of these videos in the future. I'm in the process of doing some research and getting everything ready to do a financial video, talk a little bit about Uranus and Taurus, these incoming eclipses, what it means for the markets, what it means for cryptocurrency. Stay tuned for that because that's going to be really fun. And I really appreciate all of the subscribers and everybody who makes it possible for me to be able to do this. The more that I get support on the channel, the more that I can come and actually take the time to do the research to do videos like this. So if you like this, please let me know. If you have questions about other major topics that you want me to discuss, I am happy to do so. If you like my reading style, you want to book a reading with me, or you want to pick my brain about astrology, I'm getting ready to start putting some stuff together because I want to do some study groups. It's coming, I promise. I just want to do it right. Leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. You can also check out my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com, where I practice Western and evolutionary astrology along with clairvoyant and tarot-infused readings. You guys take care. I will talk to all of you guys very soon, and stay tuned for some more videos on politics and the future of what's going on in America very soon. Take care.